Welcome, Elizabeth, and thank you for joining me. In the US, the debate has moved from making the case for gender equity on boards to how to get better gender balance at senior management levels. Where is Australia in that debate? Are we still making the case?
I think we are still making the case, but I have to say that issue of women in senior management is very much on the national agenda. And that's a much harder issue than fixing the issue of women on boards, because when you're looking at women at senior management, you're trying to address the culture of organisations. That takes time, but I think it is important that the debate stays there, that we spend some time on the case for change, but actually we need to move to action.
In May, the last board on the FTSE 100 that was female-free appointed a woman. Hallelujah. In contrast, the ASX 200 still has about 40 companies with no women on boards. Why are we so behind?
40 boards with no women, I mean, that's outrageous. In 2014, when women make up 60% of graduates from tertiary institutions, that we would have 40 boards out of a 200 with no women. It's appalling. Some quick fixes there are to help male-only boards understand that actually the research is clear. You will not produce the best outcomes for your organisation with a makeup of all men. The reality is those boards that perform best have much greater gender diversity. They have 3 or more female board directors. So actually you're not doing the best for the company. If you are after optimum results, optimum returns, then you need women on your board, and you should be moving to do that very quickly.
New research from KPMG called Cracking the Code shows that women are not promoted nearly as many times as men are. And of course we know that having a family can slow career progression. How can women strategically plan around that issue?
Look, I think firstly being forewarned is forearmed, and we do know the promotion rates for women are much slower, often because of childbearing. But I think it is about building trust within the team, open conversations, and helping organisations understand that contemporary high-performing workplaces have both full-time and flexible workers, that flexibility needs to be mainstreamed, that jobs come in all shapes and sizes, and there's some great examples of that today in 2014.
How do you get promoted if you're juggling work and family and you're working part-time?
I think part of that is it's no good just taking your 6-day-a-week job and squashing it into 3 days a week and saying, oh, well, I'll perform in that arrangement. That actually doesn't work for the employer or the employee. I think making sure that you can contribute as a flexible worker is very much about job redesign. It's about organisations working with individuals to make sure that the outcomes are appropriate for the job and work practice, and that both full-time and flexible workers can see a career path. Because if you can't see a career path and you're a flexible worker, you will end up in what they call a mummy or a daddy track. And for organisations, that won't deliver the best outcomes in any event. We need the best talent. The best talent resides 50% of that in women. And actually retaining women over their childbearing age is absolutely critical to having a high-performing organisation.
What can organisations do to encourage women to look beyond the challenge of combining parenthood and career and be more aspirational?
I think organisations can show women strong career paths for those women that choose not to have children and develop, and those women who do want to have a family as well. Because I think where we've come from is most of the women that have reached senior levels up until now have made a choice between career or work. Most of the women who are at senior levels today have made a choice between career or family. I see that in many organisations. I think what organisations now can do is say, well, actually, that's not a binary choice. You can have a strong career and also be engaged in family responsibilities, and there are a number of role models in our organisation who can show you how that's done. Because I think if we can't be what we can't see. And if we can't see women at senior levels who have the type of lives that we want to have, then that's not something to aspire to. And I think the focus has been on one style of role model. That is what we call the ideal worker. That is someone who's available 24/7, no visible caring responsibilities. And for most of us, that's not what we want. So we need a variety of role models.
Our first Blue Notes debate next week is going to look at that topic of missing in action. Who is more to blame for the lack of women in business media, men or women? Now, without stealing your thunder, did you expect by now that we would see more women in business media?
Absolutely. I mean, to think that in 2050, where women make up the majority of a population, 50.8%, that we are educated as a group to a higher level, the absence of women's voices and women's views, particularly in the business community, I find, it is distressing and disappointing. I do think it's a complex issue. The fact is there are less women at senior levels in business, the business sector in Australia, so that's going to be one thing. But also it is about, I think, maybe women being less prepared to put themselves forward. And on the other side of it, it's about the media being reluctant to take the extra steps that are necessary to find women who may not be as visible as men.
Why do you think women are reluctant to put themselves forward, to be more visible, to lean in to media?
I think part of that comes from the fact that if you don't see a lot of other women doing it, maybe you think that that's not something that I could do either. I think also we want to be so prepared, so expert, that we think, oh, well, maybe we're not the best one to be putting ourselves forward. So that's maybe about humility, possibly about a lack of confidence. But there is no research to show that women are less confident than men. What I do think, though, is if you sit outside the dominant grouping, and the dominant grouping in business is men, then necessarily you will feel less confident to put yourself forward. And I think that's one other reason that women may not be as forthcoming around media.
How important is it to be visible both internally and externally to progress your career?
Look, it's absolutely critical. Having internal visibility, and that's about sponsorship, particularly within organisations, but also starting to build connections externally. And I know from my own experience, I started to get good visibility when I stepped out and gave my first speech, which was at a Law Council conference. But I know it was that speech that actually gave me some credibility to go out and talk more broadly about areas in my area of practice, which was technology law. But if I hadn't made that first step to have some visibility, I'm not sure that I would have ever become Australia's Sex Discrimination Commissioner. So it's absolutely critical. It doesn't have to be scary. The more you do it, the better you become. And I really would urge women to step out, step into the unknown. It's okay to be a bit uncomfortable. We're sometimes at our best when we're uncomfortable, but just to be brave and put themselves forward, because I know there's so many skilled and talented women in this country, and I want to see them equally represented with men, particularly in the business arena.
Thank you for joining me, Elizabeth, and looking forward to the debate.
Thanks.